Hi, I'm Shannon and welcome to the Riverside Kitchen. Today we're going to be cooking a deceptively simple but delicious mushroom risotto. Now this is great. This is an ideal evening meal for two, or perhaps a lovely starter for 4 people. It does take a little bit of time to cook the rice because that needs to absorb all of the liquid that you've got, all of the stock. But my advice is that it's really well worth the wait. You do have to be a little bit patient, but it's well worth the wait. So to start with, you need 3 shallots diced. And next, finely slice the mushrooms. I'm using chestnut mushrooms here, but you can use whatever mushrooms you like. Right, so if I put these in there, so firstly, melt your butter over a reasonable heat. Don't use all of the butter, leave a little bit to the end. So firstly, melt 2/3 of the butter over a medium heat. And add in your shallots. Now you want to be cooking these so they're just translucent. You don't want any colour to them, but you want them to be nice and soft and cooked through thoroughly. I'm not adding the garlic immediately because I don't want it to burn. I think garlic is a little better added later in the process. So they need to be cooking for about 5 minutes or so to make sure that they're nice and soft. And once they've started to cook through, add your garlic. And this is a fabulous little garlic press from a well-known Swedish store, $1.99 I seem to recall, not expensive, but the best one I've ever had. I'm not sponsored by a Swedish store, by the way, I'm just saying. So in goes our garlic. Give it a bit more of a stir through. I'm going to turn the heat down slightly and add our arborio rice. And stir that through. So just combine that with the onions for 2 or 3 minutes. Make sure that all the rice is coated in the butter. And then you add 75 millilitres of dry white wine. And keep cooking that through until all of the wine is absorbed. And what that will do is it will burn off the alcohol in the wine as well. So if you were to taste it now, it would be really not very nice, but that will burn off all the alcohol. It'll be a lovely flavour. So now you can see that the wine has been absorbed completely. We need to now start adding the stock. You don't add it all at once, you add just a little bit at a time. And the trick with a wonderful risotto is you have to keep stirring. Now, the geek in me wondered why you had to keep stirring it. Why not just throw all of the stock in and be done? There is a very good scientific reason for this. So, Mrs. Geek here will tell you what it is. This is a wonderful book. This is McGee on food and cooking. And Harold McGee is credited by Heston Blumenthal as having given him the inspiration to cook in the way he does. It's the science behind cooking, and a lot of things that we're told by chefs are not necessarily true and not necessarily based on science. But what this book does is it explains cookery steps, the science behind cooking, the molecular structure of cooking, what happens when you heat ingredients and so on. So it's an absolute font of knowledge. So I looked up why it was necessary to keep stirring risotto. And I'm going to tell you the answer. Give the glasses. I'm going to keep stirring at the same time. That's really important. So Harold McGee says on risotto, turning rice into its own sauce. This time-consuming technique subjects the rice grains to constant friction and rubs softened endosperm from the surface so it can become dissolved in the liquid. Stirring only at the end of cooking breaks the softened grains apart rather than removing the surface layer. In addition, the cooking of small amounts of liquid in an open pan causes much of the moisture to evaporate, which means that more of the cooking liquid must be used, and thus more of the cooking liquid's flavour becomes concentrated in the dish. So it's the rubbing together, it's the friction between the grains of rice that thicken the sauce and give it its lovely flavour and wonderful texture. So you have to keep stirring, there is no shortcut to this stage. And you can see as you're cooking it that the volume of the rice is increasing. As it's absorbing the stock, you'll see that the size of the dish in the pan is increasing. I feel as though this is a bit of a labour of love, having to keep stirring. It's worth it. As you can see, it's on a very, very low simmer. This is not quick cooking. One thing I would say about cooking rice, especially arborio rice, is that you need to judge when it's cooked. You need to judge how much liquid should go in. Although this recipe says 600 millilitres of stock, you may find that that's not quite enough. And if the sauce is drying out, you may need to add a little more water. And that's because rice comes from different crops, it's grown at different times, it has different characteristics, and it might require either a little more or a little less liquid to get it completely cooked. So my best tip is just taste it, have a try and see what you think, and adjust accordingly. So when your rice resembles, I would say, a thick porridge, and there's nothing like porridge, add your mushrooms. So once you've added your mushrooms, you cook for a further 5 or 6 minutes. It can take 20 to 25 minutes to make sure that your rice is cooked, and when it has, you add in the butter and then grate in your Parmesan cheese. Finally, add in your seasoning. Add in a little pepper. And I recommend you have a taste before adding more salt. So see what you think about the seasoning. Yeah, needs a little bit of salt. The Parmesan's quite salty in its own right, but not quite enough. Just going to add a little bit of salt. And finally, I think that very few dishes don't benefit from just a tiny, tiny bit of lemon juice or lemon zest. And in this case, I'm going to add a very little bit of lemon zest to this dish. Not much. I don't want to overwhelm it or take away from any of the other flavours. Just a tiny little bit of lemon zest. So there you have it, a delicious and carefully prepared mushroom risotto. Now, please let us have your comments. We'd love to hear from you. Like our page if you like the recipe, and subscribe if you want to get updates on our future recipes.